Sam Bankman Fried actually gets freed on bail for $250 million. $250 million. That's quite an amount. Let's see how he compares to other fraudsters over the history of time. All right. So, first thing here is, like I said, 250 million. Now, who is he being compared to the most? He's actually being compared to Bernie Madoff, who, he through a Ponzi scheme took about $50 billion worth and was released on $10 million bail in 2008. He was actually sentenced to 150 years in prison. It's quite a bit of time, small fee, right? But what about Sam? He's getting 250 million bail. We don't know what the sentencing period is going to be like. Now, 250 million is actually the second highest in terms of a bail for any type of fraud or criminal activity when it comes to at least this type of crime that he was doing, when it's money laundering, racketeering, fraud, that kind of stuff. Okay. But here's the thing though. So he's released on $250 million bail. You know who signed for it? How many people signed for this bail? 4 people. That's how well connected and the opposite of poverty that him and his family and his networks live in. It only took 4 signatures to vouch for the fact that 250 million was doable for a bond. So what does he do? He actually goes to his parents' home in California and he's under house arrest. Now, when you live in a house like his parents do, and this guy loves playing video games, not much of a house arrest as it is. All right. So pretty big. All right. And look, what's nice about this article, and this is only that happens in the crypto articles, is that it comes clean on exactly what he did and how it's looked at. And so this quote is by Bill Herman, who's the co-founder of fund manager Wilshire Phoenix. And he says, like Madoff, FTX Bankman Fried proved adept at using his pedigree and connections to seduce investors, unbeknownst to them, into participating in one of the more high-profile schemes in modern times. You look at any of the mainstream articles, and they're all about how it was mismanagement, operative business. That's the angle that they spin it. But this is the cold hard truth, is that it was premeditated and carried out over a long period of time, knowing it was happening, crafted in a plan of stealing other people's money and using it. So those are the users of FTX that were getting burnt. $10 billion worth was actually being taken of users' funds. So how does he stack up now in terms of the rest? And before I go there, they even say that, look, if he cooperates, he could actually get out of prison before he needs a cane. Now, what age that actually is, who knows? Sam's not exactly in the best health as it is. He may need a cane sooner rather than later. But Madoff got 150 years. What do you think Bankman Fried's going to get? We don't know, right? We do know that a massive fine could be levied at him. I'm not sure about the timing. And here's what I'm saying. I think the timing will be significant only because there are more people involved in this, obviously, than just Sam Bankman Fried, right? He was supposed to testify the night before. He's supposed to let it all loose and be questioned, and where he has to come clean and literally reveal names. They take him off to prison. Come on, they couldn't wait. So I'm not usually a conspiracy theorist guy, but that to me sounds pretty suspicious that they're doing that. And so look, there's a lot of deep pockets that are involved in this. Do they want him to spill the beans? Nope. And I don't think they want him to see daylight, because they may come under scrutiny. So interesting to see how that plays out. Now, how does he stack up in front of the other people here? So Michael Milken here, this was in 1989. 1989 was Michael Milken. He was actually an executive at an entity called Drexel, Burnham, and Lambert. And he was charged with racketeering and securities fraud. They actually levied a $250 million bond at him as well. But that was 1989. So when you adjust it for the valuation of today, it actually sits at $570 million bond today. Now, he pleaded guilty. He had 6 felony accounts, and he was sentenced to $600 million in fines and only 10 years in prison. So Madoff was 10 million in fines, but he got 150 years. He wasn't going to see the light of day. This gentleman got 10 years in prison, but a massive fine of $600 million. It's difficult to understand how they process that. Here's what is very interesting here, though, of all these names. Okay, you get Elizabeth Holmes in there as well, and Suge Knight. If you don't know hip hop, you won't recognize that name, but otherwise you definitely will. But here's our friend Jordan Belfort here, and I use that. I'm being sarcastic when I say friend. This individual here, pleaded guilty to fraud and was given a $10 million bond to get out, a $10 million bail, and he actually served 22 months, almost 2 years in prison out of a 4-year prison sentence. And this is the guy who is very vocal right now and is very popular, mainly because of the Wolf of Wall Street movie by Leonardo DiCaprio playing him. And his role became cool, so to speak, right? But imagine if Sam Bankman-Fried were to have a movie made out of him where he looks cool. That wouldn't even register now on anybody. But for some reason, it worked for Jordan Belfort. So I'm always wary of what he says, especially when it comes to the crypto space. He's calling everything else a scam when he's a pretty big scam artist himself. At least he was. So it's something that you can forgive, I guess, to some degree if you weren't involved in it, but you definitely can't forget that. And it seems like a lot of people have forgotten that. Okay. And so where do I think this is going to play out? And look, I think he will get a sizable fine because people can sign off for it and pay it. So definitely I think he'll get that. But I also think he's going to get a lengthy sentence. I think he's going to get at least 50 years, mainly because of what I mentioned before, that I don't think people want him to be in a position where he can spill the beans. They're gonna bury him in prison and potentially bury him in, like, literally, in order to make sure that doesn't happen. So here's what I'm saying. I think he will get a $200 million fine and a 50-year prison sentence. Put in the comments below what you think he's going to be sentenced with. Crazy thing is if he doesn't get sentenced. I mean, that and they just say, here's a massive fine, you're scot-free. Ooh, that won't be good. That won't be good for crypto, and that's going to set up a whole storm that nobody wants to deal with. So I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, right? Put in the comments what you think. If you found value in this, hit the like button and definitely hit the subscribe button